Hey there guys, welcome back to another episode of Gavinski's Tutorials. Today I'm going to do a walkthrough of OktaDie. That's actually the right pronunciation, not OktaDie. So all these apps by Diego Capoccitti, me and everybody else have been calling them, Swarma Die, Drone Die, Alchem Die, and whatever. That's not the right pronunciation. It's supposed to be like Die as in his name, Diego, the developer. So OktaDie. So that's the first thing that is probably news to you on this video. I kind of got used to calling them Die. It's pretty hard for me to adjust, I gotta say. So I'm going to do a detailed walkthrough of OktaDie. I'm sure I'm going to call it OktaDie further through this video. Old habits die hard. So this is based on the Lyra-8. It's not an official emulation or anything like that. But there are a few things about this that, you're going to love, I'd say. For one thing, it's properly MPE. So I'm looking at the iPad version here. So here I've got a little touchscreen MPE controller. I'm using Salome by Brambos. And so I've actually got two instances of OktaDie set up. One of them I've just set. It's basically the same preset I've got here. I called it OktaDie just now, didn't I? Anyway, so same preset basically, but I tweaked a few things here like the drive and modulation. We'll talk about all that stuff later. But then the second instance, right, this one, I'm doing per note pitch bends. And there's actually, if we go into the setup panel, we've got a few different choices here. Let's see, where is this? This just got added, so I think I'm hiding something here. Wait a second. Okay, here it is. Yeah, down here, right. See here, I can make the MPE behave in two different ways. So note gain. So here, I can bring it in completely with total control over the volume level. So if I bring this down quickly, that volume will die quickly. And there's even a little curve control in here as well that allows me to make sure I've got silence when I'm near the bottom of these pads, which is something I asked Diego to add. And that's just great. Right, or we have the more original one where there'll be a slow decay just like there is in the hardware when you take your finger off. Okay, so you got your choice of those, so that's brilliant. So great to have an MPE version of this. On iPad there's Mononoke by Brambos, which is based on this, and you'll see, it's really, there's quite a few differences, and one of the biggest differences is that you can really play this like a normal MPE synth. In Mononoke, it's set up in a slightly weird way that I could never adjust to it. I always wanted a bit more control, so I'm getting that from this. Now, I have asked Diego, why not let people modulate things like the sharp control, which basically controls the brightness per note as well, and I'm pretty sure that's coming in an update. So I just love having that. But I want to mention we can also just use sequencers and things to play this, right? So here I'm using Fugue Machine Rubato. I've got a whole massive long series of walkthroughs on this over on my Patreon. Brilliant sequencer. And you know, I can just play in with notes. And when we play with the keyboard, we can set it up in two different ways inside the app. Either we have MIDI tune mode on, right, like it's on here, or we can turn that off. So with MIDI tune mode on, you know, here it's playing a C, that's a D, D sharp, and so on, right? But if I turn MIDI tune mode off, instead, the way it works is that these pads, right? If I look at each of these pads here, this is not actually a very good example for this init patch. Let me just change this. Oops. So here, do you see this? This is triggering this first pad here. This is triggering the second pad. This is triggering the third pad. This is triggering the fourth pad, and so on, right? And the actual pitch depends on the tune knob, right? So here, if I adjust this, I'm actually adjusting the pitch. So it has nothing to do with the pitch of the incoming MIDI. So that's really cool that we've got those. So we can also use it as an effect. So later I'll look at examples of that. I've got a whole bunch of things set up here. So we come back here. Let's just go to the, it's just a basic like drone. And I'll walk through the basics of the app. So this video will be really useful if you're trying to learn how to use this. I mean, it might even be useful for owners of Lyra-8, because this is really, in most functions, it's identical. Now, we start with a pretty mild-mannered sound, but as you'll probably know, this Lyra-8 can get really crazy, and so can this. So, please don't listen to this and just think, oh God, this sounds nothing like a Lyra-8. It's going to get really crazy later on, don't worry. So let's understand the basic UI. So here we've got an LFO section. Here, a delay. Here, distortion. Okay, here's the main section. So we have these pads that we can play. And there's a few different options, but generally I like this option where just the higher you press, it's like on the hardware, you're pressing harder. So like a light, if you want like a light touch, you just press near the bottom, and you can see the little black line. And you can also actually adjust that, like you're adjusting your finger pressure continuously on a sensor, right? So these all set, and so you just tune everything yourself with this. Or again, you can just play in with MIDI and have MIDI tune mode on, and everything will be pitched the way you want it, right? But you wouldn't have that with the original Lyra-8 or anything. Let me just put this back the way it was. Look, a really cool thing. So with the original Lyras, people would put coins on them to sustain a pad or a sensor. And in this, you can do that by right-clicking if you're using a mouse. Or if you're using your finger, what you do is just press the pad and then press it again, and the coin will appear, and now that's latched. And then to get rid of it, you do the same thing, just press, and press with one finger and then tap with another finger at the same time, and the coin will disappear and it'll eventually fade out. Fast, so here there's just a little switch. So here we're getting, basically a fast attack and fast decay. And with the fast off, it's much slower, especially on the decay. And these are arranged into 4 pairs. Pair 1, pair 2, pair 3, pair 4. The tuning options for each pair are a little bit different. So the first pair, the range goes from 15 Hertz to 650, right? In this second pair, you can see we can't go so low. It only goes down to 33, but it goes higher, right? And same here, 70 to 3040. And this pair go from 150 up to 6500. And let me just reset it and bring hold down again. So let me show you something cool. So the hold knob, you might have gathered, basically this hold knob, if I bring this up, that's just like I'm playing all 4 of these at the same time. So one thing you can do is maybe just have this down a bit, and then you can still play these, and it'll just kind of change the flavor a bit, but you still have all of the voices being droned. But let me show you something else really cool, because look at this. If we put these down to fast, it's not just when I touch the sensor that the behavior will be a bit different, it's also the behavior of the hold knob is different. So look at this, see how long it takes for the sound to come in when I bring hold up now. I put both these down to fast. So you see that's like up at 50%, there's still nothing. So it only starts coming in when I put it up here. So what's interesting to do is in the pair have one of them. See, if I put fast off, then they start coming in earlier. So what we can do is we can put one to fast and the other to, I call it slow. I don't know if that's the official terminology, but put that to slow. So now when I bring this up, we'll get this pair coming in first, and then this pair will come in only later. So that could also be kind of cool to modulate that hold knob like that. And, all parameters and everything are exposed. So yeah, map things to your controller, hardware controller, or at different LFOs or whatever, no problem. So here there's a vibrato switch. You don't have any control over depth or rate when you use this vibrato switch. It's just on or off. But actually they all have a slightly different rate. Basically, the lower, the slower. So this one, the vibrato is slow, and this one, the vibrato will be fastest, and around here it's going to be sort of medium. Right? But also, if you use a mod wheel, then you can dial in the depth of the vibrato, right? So Let me latch a few of these. And here. Oh, hang on. Let's check what's going on there. Oh, I gotta turn vibrato off, maybe on this. Hang on, yeah. Okay, yes. So here I'm controlling the depth. I still can't control the rate, that rate is just baked in. But because you can play this MPE, with an MPE controller, you just wiggle your finger around to do a vibrato. Very easy. Just right click to get rid of those. I'm using a mouse, so you can see what I'm doing. So let's just latch a couple of these. Here I'm just going to take the delay down. I'm just going to check anything else about the setup. So distortion is down, that's what I want. Total feedback down, I want that down, I'll talk about that later. And this, yes, I want this in this position, we'll talk about that later. Now, by the way, this pitch thing, we can lower the pitch of all the voices in this group with this knob, and this one will lower the pitch of all these voices. But they'll maintain their like intervallic relationship to each other. Another thing I want to show you is sharp. So I really do want this to be MPE controllable, because that's going to be really nice. It's similar to controlling filter cutoff, right? Which is a really common MPE destination. So here we're basically morphing from a triangle to something almost like a square. And now let's look at modulation. So with these switches all set to the middle, there's no modulation of these voices happening. If I put this up here, and if I dial in some modulation depth, then now that's being modulated by this pair. It's being modulated by 3 and 4. So you see then, if I release this, now, this is just not relevant anymore, right? So even if I bring this mod all the way up, this has to be on for it to modulate this. So you can do really interesting stuff with that. See here, it's set to fast. Let me set it to slow. Listen to that. And of course the tune will also affect it. Now, let's bring that down, and let's, I can bring this down or put it in the middle. So now let me put this up and bring mod here up. Let's just get rid of that for a second. So now this is being modulated by this. And that's really nice. Bring that down. You know, that's just 15 hertz. You know, here I'm reducing the modulation depth. There, the modulation up high. What am I doing? Sorry. Hang on. I want to change the tune. There we go. Ooh. So this is FM, right? Oh, it's glorious. And so look, then it's really going to get crazy if I turn this switch up. So now there's going to be cross modulation if I bring this up. It's just going to get really crazy and unpredictable. And again, if I release this one, we'll get a sort of slow fade out. Listen. It's absolutely brilliant. And, you know, this will also, you know, because we were changing the shape of the waveform here, so that'll also make a difference. Massive difference. Because remember, now it's more like a square. And now, by the way, you can right tap to MIDI learn and stuff. Ah, it's so good. I love this sort of thing. So, right, so that's how this works when the switches are like that. But then if we bring this down, then now you can see it says LFO, FB, that means feedback, and CV. I'll talk about CV input later. That's something that we'll do when we use this as an effect, not as an instrument. At least not in the iPad version anyway. I think it's a bit different how it's set up on the desktop. But here, so see here now. Now remember, you've got to have mod up here, okay? So get mod up here. Now, this being modulated by this LFO here. So the LFO is 2 square waves. This is the frequency for the first one. This is the frequency for the second one. And it can be AND, which is multiplying these, or OR. And when it's on OR, you get 3 values. With AND, you just get 2. It's like on or off. With this one, it's got some intermediate thing. It's easier to hear if I turn this up. See? That's AND. You hear just 2 tones. But here we're getting 3 tones. Or we can do anyway. I'm not really noticing it there. And we can have them synced as well, where LFO A's frequency will modulate LFO B's frequency. And so obviously with this sort of thing, you know, changing the depth of the modulation is going to make a huge difference. can be very sort of bagpipe-like. Really gritty. But what is a pity is that, you know, it's just square, that's all you get. I mean, that's what the original's like, but I remember reading the Sound on Sound review. I think it's Paul Nagel was saying, you know, it's such a pity, like, why is there no triangle option here? We do have a triangle option over here, but not here for the main LFO. Okay, so that's the LFO. And we'll talk about CV later. But now I want to show you total feedback. So, well, let's just leave it on, or let's go to something else. Let's try this, okay? So, to show you total feedback, this will basically take over the LFO setting. So let me first put on the LFO setting. I'll just put it on for all of them. And I'll put the mod up a little bit. And now we're starting, you know, getting the LFO modulating these again, right? But if I put this up instead now, basically the output of the whole thing, you know, the voices and going through the delay and then into the distortion and everything, all that will basically come back and be fed back in as a modulation for the FM. So look, I mean, that's with that up, everything cranked up, like it can get really crazy. But if I bring mod down to just a little bit, you know, we can really dial that in and get something a lot like still gritty and interesting, but not as chaotic. Now, let me get rid of that and let me put these back up so that we're getting the pairs modulating each other. And let me just turn mod down a second here again. Just get this down, and I'm just going to take the delay down and everything. And I think I'm just going to pitch these down a little bit. Okay. So remember, you know, now we're hearing all 8 voices, right? Because I got both these holds up. So remember here in this setup, this is being modulated. This pair is being modulated by this pair, right? And so on. If I bring this up, let me bring this down. Now this pair is being modulated by this pair. Here it's like a cross modulation. If I put this switch up now, 7 and 8, so this pair 4 will modulate pair 1, and pair 1 will modulate pair 2, and pair 2 will modulate pair 3, right? So it's just got a different quality to it. Let me just dial it in a little bit. that's with the switch up, and that's it down, right? That's just the pair modulation. Here it's like a ring, the whole thing. When I put this up, I will say one thing, you know, I mean, I know the hardware is like that, but I personally really dislike having this sort of mirroring thing here, where, you know, here on this pair you have mod on the left and sharp on the right, and here you have sharp on the left and mod on the right. Just, you know, most plugins don't do things like that, and I personally prefer the way most plugins work. Even if this sort of looks cool or whatever, it just, I need to pay more attention than I'd like to. I'm really not a fan of that design choice, but I mean, I know if people were used to the hardware and then it was, you know, changed here, that would be annoying for them. So it's not a big deal, but, you know, it's still something. So there's the vibrato. Bringing down the pitch of this group. I mean, you just change the pitch, you can sometimes just get something really lovely. That's nice. I really like that. So that's making this last pair sharp. Now that's sharp. This one's sharp. Pretty nice. So I like what the delay is adding there. So let's just take hold down and let me just put these on fast maybe initially. So you can hear there the delay. So in the delay we have 2 delay times, time 1 and time 2. So time for the 2 different delays, feedback amount, mix, and then modulation depth for time 1, modulation depth for time 2. Here we set what is actually modulating the times. Is it the LFO? So here we have a square and a triangle option. The rates of these is related to these. And, or it can be self, or here it's off. Okay, here there would be no modulation, and here self. So its output will be fed back in to modulate itself. So let's bring the feedback up. Hear that self-oscillating? Bring it up enough. Now, let's bring up the time modulation. So here it's using the LFO. That's set to triangle, but it's still using these rates. And here square. So on that, I definitely like the triangle more in that particular one. Or self. Whoa. Let's crank that modulation. It's really dirty, huh? Oh yeah. That's nice. I'm still discovering, despite having spent a few days, good few days with this, I'm still discovering things. So there, the LFO on the square, this triangle. Oh yeah. Bring the rates of those up. Delay. Lovely. I could push the volume up as well. Of course, you could always put it through a compressor or something too if you need to. So remember, hold knob behavior also changes. Right, that's with them set to slow. It's really nice to play that on fast. That'd be definitely nice to modulate, maybe with a square wave or something. Distortion. So first of all, mix and drive. So let's crank. These tones. nice what the delay's adding there. Yeah, like a chorus. So in the setup panel, character 0, clean digital, 100, faithful to the hardware, noise, bleed, crosstalk, drift, and tolerances. We've also got a stereo spread, delay line 1 on the left, delay line 2 on the right, separate distortions, off is mono, like the hardware. I quite like it on. MIDI, so remember, MIDI tune mode. So let's take hold down. So just like, make sure this is clear. So that's a C, that's a D, D sharp, right? But if I turn that off, instead, when I use this, it's just going to trigger these. Let me just turn fast off so we can maybe see everything a little bit clearer. I've got to play down here. So this is triggering the first pad. This is triggering the second pad, third pad, and so on, right? But if I go in here and I change white keys, then now it's only going to be the white keys that'll trigger it. So that's pad 1, pad 2, pad 3, pad 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? And so what will the tune knob will set the pitch, as we mentioned earlier. Pitch band range for MPE or pitch wheel. Choose whether MPE pressure or CC74 will control the expression, and again that expression at the moment is just related to volume. And we demoed the difference between sensor and note gain and talked about curve at the beginning of the video. And then with the pad pressure, will the loudness of the pad depend on the position, how high up you play, or the area of your finger, or both, and so on. Instant seed, new seed, this is just, it can cause a little tiny variation in the sound, like different hardware units might have a slight difference in their sound. There's also some panel zoom option here, right? You can pinch to zoom, which is nice. I keep forgetting about that actually. Couple of things in here as well, zoom option and stuff. Download the manual, things like that. So let me show you as an effect. So this is going to be a little bit different, how you set it up in different hosts and things. The way I'm showing you here is the way it works anyway on the iPad inside AUM. So here I've just got a guitar, and then here I'm loading OktaDie as an effect. And when you load it and then you go to rear panel, this external in, you can see I can adjust the volume of that instrument going in to this to then be further processed. So here, it's just basically just using the delay on it. And, but I can still play these and I can I could go in and tune all this. But there's some sort of modulation or something going on here, vibrato or something, is there? Definitely something set up somewhere. So anyway, I didn't set this patch up to, have that, but I just want to mention that you can. So that's just a very simple example of using it as an effect. So if we come into this one here, just got this little drum thing. And then if we go in here and go to the rear panel, well, I've still got external in set up here, so we can hear the drums. But if I take that down, you can hear now, all we're hearing is the ducking caused by the drums, and that's because I've got this CV envelope. So I've also clicked that. So that's creating this ducking effect. And now here we're also hearing the drums. So, the reason we're hearing that is because hold is on these. If I take hold down and I'm not playing any of the sensors, then, all we're hearing is the drums, just like this is not even there. And then I can go in and add on the delay and everything else as well if I want. Okay, so that's how that works. And here, just a little drone. And here, let's see what's happening. So basically here, there's an envelope follower that's following the amplitude of that incoming audio, and it's being used to modulate. That's the modulation source for the delay now, instead of all this self LFO whatever that's just been taken over now by that amplitude of that incoming audio. Right? Nice. And you can see I'm also, I also let this one have a drone. So here we got this little thing, it's just a little clicky noise basically that I'm putting through this tape and octave filter and phaser. And that reverb, I'll just take that reverb off actually. So here I'm all, no actually I've just to get rid of that, I'm not using that. So here now, CV voices. So now this can be the modulation source for the voices. Any of the voices that are set down to LFO, they'll now be getting modulated by that envelope of that incoming audio instead. So remember, you're going to want mod up there. So right, so that's if I turn all those off. And so now just this one's getting modulated by that incoming audio. And now this one too. And now this one as well. And now this one. And I can dial in the depth with this. So, really versatile, and especially, like the thing about Diego's plugins, the prices are just so reasonable. So reasonable, it's crazy. How could you say no at that kind of price, really? If you like experimental stuff, drone and everything. It's crazy. There, look, I'm bringing in the LFO, modulating some of these. Yeah, it's so gnarly. That's a bit too much, yeah. It's great to have the MPE option. That just makes it so much more interesting. I didn't use it that much during the demo because, you know, it's easier to just sort of keep everything focused on this UI. But definitely MPE input is a way that I really like doing it. But, you know, even with just the, like setting the tunes here and stuff, and playing around with hold and everything, I mean, you can definitely come up with some really interesting stuff in the regular version as well without bothering with MPE. Super cool. If I forgot to mention anything, I'll put it in the pinned comment. The pinned comments are always worth a read. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you found this useful, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.